Vision. You're with Andrew and the luxurious hotel, the Cosmopolitan in St Kilda. We have Glenn from Deicide who put on the most awesome and energetic show last night at the Prince of Wales. And also the EVs All Ages show today was cancelled, unfortunately, but we'll get into that a little bit later. How you doing, Glenn? Welcome to Australia.
It's great to be here.
So is Australia obviously what you expected?
Pretty much so, yeah. It's been good so far.
Yeah. How's the show's been going?
Great.
Yeah.
Great.
So how do you feel about today's show that got blown out due to a council group or a Christian association
or something? It wouldn't be the first time, man.
Yeah.
That's for sure. Yeah.
It's a bit sad. Yeah. Nothing can be done about it.
Yeah.
Well, the album's been out for a couple of months now, and which part of the world has it had the most impact as far as fans?
That's really hard to say, man.
Yeah.
We have a pretty growing fan base. In the U.S., the bigger cities, you have more kids showing up in that, but the best places are out of the country, like places like this, Mexico, Canada, Europe, places like that.
So have you done like any major festivals or just small club shows throughout Europe?
We've done some festivals over in Holland and places like that,
And who have you played with?
And a lot of different bands.
Yeah. Been a great response?
Pretty much so, yeah.
I was going to say too, this might come as a surprise to me. Modern Drummer did a write-up on Steve and his drumming. How did you feel about that? Was that kind of like it sort of buzzed me out because those sort of magazines tend to focus on big drummers like Dave Weckl, all these jazz fusion drummers, and I really was sort of quite pleased that they've actually started to recognise this style of music apart from what the music's present itself.
I was amazed to hear it. Yeah, it was really good.
Did he buzz about it?
Yeah, he was telling us all about it. We did a thing for me, Eric and Brian did a thing in Guitar Player a few years back and that, and so it was kind of good to be able to see Steve do something like that.
Yeah, that's really good. They recognise that sort of talent. The album's sort of gone back to the simplicity of the first album, which is to me one of my favourites as well. And you moved away from the technical side you did with Legion. Is that because you were sort of getting sick of the technical stuff, or you just wanted to get back into the simple groove sort of feel?
Well, we were over in Europe before we started writing this record, and this is after Legion and that. And we had in the past, while we're writing Legion and that, we threw out a lot of catchy riffs and went for a technical sound, try to make everything real. I don't know, not so much complicated, but just more, a little bit more intense in the writing. And a lot more. We focused more on the speed than we did the catchy, chunks and rhythms. And so what we did is we had a little conversation on the bus over there in Europe on one of these tours, and decided that what we need to do is with this record is go back to the beginning and
back to basics. Yeah.
So,
I've noticed too. Scott Burns produced this one, and I know you guys produced Legion yourself. What was the reason to getting Scott back into the studio again?
Well, Scott, we put down. What we do is we get in there. It's more or less like it's always been like the same way every record. We go into the studio. Scott sets us up, and Scott engineers us. Scott's got an idea, and that we'll listen to him and that. But we've always had the say in the music. It's always been produced by Deicide. Scott, we give Scott co-producing because we gotta give him credit for some of his stuff because he does have some good ideas as far as like the technical side of things. So we give him that much credit for it. But as far as like the outcome of what we sound like, it's completely up to us. Nobody tells us what to write or changes anything.
Yeah. Notice your vocal style's gone hell deep, very, very deep, and you sort of, I know in the past you've experimented with 3 types of vocals, you put them all together like you did on the first album. What was the reason behind making your voice deeper? You wanted to put your message across in more of a ferocious manner, or it's just a progression in your style of singing?
Well, I got there's some vocal tracks on the record that are 3, that are layered tracks, but I wanted to just keep everything real low. I didn't want to really go too much with the screaming of some of the high stuff like we did on the first album, and I just wanted to keep things in a manner where it's able to I can pull them off live, and it just sounds more, I think, more back to the basics, man. To just put them at a vocal line. They're a lot more clear on this album. I used a lot better microphone on this album, and the pronunciation, I really worked on.
Clear.
I went back and it took me like 3 months of, going in and out of the studio recording.
And I've noticed some of the lyrics on this album. How do they differ from your previous sort of stuff? What are your new sort of messages you're trying to put
I'm
across?
just dealing what I've been dealing with for the last few years, and I just.
Have you had any different sort of things that have made you want to write something different, like something sort of come into your mind, thinking, well, I'll get into that sort of aspect of writing? Like any different types of subjects based on Satanism coming to your brain to write about?
Well, I mean, the new album we did, the last song on the album's Confessional Rape.
Yeah.
And it's just years and years of listening and reading the paper and that every day you pick it up, man. There's some priest molesting some kid somewhere,
Yeah.
man, and it's like
Every day.
the music kept flowing to me, and it's like back in my, it was like when we wrote the song and then we put it together and that, and it's like the lyrics were in my head. I just didn't know which ones they actually were until I actually come down to that particular song and put them down, and it just like flowed out of me. So I just went with what came to me. So
Yeah.
I just had to express my opinion about all that stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, it's time for news on Metal Vision, and we've got an absolute heap